If you've ever sold your heart to save someone you love, just promise me you'll look deeper before signing your soul away. I met Nathaniel Hart the same week my mother collapsed in the kitchen. She'd been tired for months, brushing it off as age or stress. But I knew better. When the hospital confirmed heart failure and rattled off costs for surgery, I left the room. Not because I didn't care, because I did. Too much. I didn't have the money. I didn't even have good credit. Just a pile of freelance invoices and an apartment with more mildew than furniture. So when Nathaniel walked into my life, sharp suit, calculated smile, I was already one breath from drowning. He approached me like it was business. It was business. A 6-month agreement, he said, sliding the contract across the cafe table like a resume. You play the part of my girlfriend. Events, photos, meet and greets. In exchange, I cover your mother's medical expenses. I should have asked why me. Why not a model, an actress, someone with a polished pedigree instead of a woman wearing thrifted boots and an unpaid phone bill? But I didn't ask. I signed. The first event was a gala. He dressed me in a navy silk gown that didn't feel like mine, and introduced me to people who only smiled with their eyes. We posed. We laughed on cue. He touched my lower back just enough to make the photos look real. And it did feel real, worryingly so. He'd brush my hair behind my ear like it meant something. At dinners, he'd whisper jokes that made me choke on wine. In cars, we'd argue about music, and it didn't feel fake. Not at all. Maybe I'm stupid, but I let myself imagine things. Imagine him, us. Until the night I found the ring box in his coat pocket. I hadn't meant to snoop. I was cold. I borrowed his jacket. But there it was, velvet, square, and too damn heavy for hope. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it like it might bite. Then I did the one thing I shouldn't have done. I Googled his name, then clicked images, and that's when I saw her. The one woman I'd hoped never to see again. Her lips still shaped like poison, her smile still weaponized. Kayla Ransom. My high school's golden sociopath. The girl who'd made my senior year a private war, and in the photo, she was wearing my ring. I don't know what was worse, that he was engaged or that he was engaged to her. Just say continue when you're ready for more. I dropped the phone, literally dropped it onto the marble bathroom floor like it was something filthy that had just burned my hand. My breath came in short, panicked puffs as if I'd sprinted 10 miles and landed in a nightmare. There she was, Kayla Ransom, her hand perched on Nathaniel's chest like she owned him, like she always owned whatever she wanted. The caption below read, "Soon to be Mr. and Mrs. Hart, #engaged, #power couple." That ring, that same box, that same design. It was hers, not mine, not even pretend mine. I leaned against the sink, my fingers gripping the edge so hard my knuckles went white. My reflection didn't look like me. I looked like someone who'd just been played. Again, I hadn't seen Kayla in nearly 10 years. Not since she torched my reputation with one whispered lie and an anonymous tip that got me suspended from senior year track and lost me my scholarship. I could still hear her voice dripping with fake concern, calling me unstable when I cried. She was the kind of person who didn't just want to win. She wanted the person next to her to lose so hard they never stood up again. And now she was back in my life, without even trying. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed it down, letting the fury boil quiet and deep. By the time I walked out of the bathroom, Nathaniel was sipping wine on the couch, legs crossed like he hadn't detonated my life with a secret engagement. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "How's your mom?" he asked casually. I sat down, the contract suddenly feeling like shackles around my wrists. "Still in pre-op. Doctors say we'll know more by next week." He nodded. "That's good. Stable is good." Stable. The word snapped something in me. "Is she stable too?" I asked, watching his eyes for a flicker. Kayla, his jaw didn't tighten. That would have been too honest. Instead, he laughed, low, amused. "So you've seen the engagement announcement?" I didn't reply. She insisted. "PR move. Her parents are old money royalty. This arrangement with you, it's temporary. And I'm just a warm-up act." My voice was sharp, thin. "A placeholder while she plans the wedding?" "No," he said smoothly. "You're the alibi." The room went silent. Kayla wanted to delay the announcement until the next quarter. He continued, but that would have looked suspicious given my board obligations. Dating someone like you gives me balance, keeps me grounded, accessible. I was shaking. I'm not your prop. He stood, brushing invisible lint off his tailored pants. You signed the contract, you get paid, your mother gets the surgery, and Kayla never has to know. That was the moment something inside me twisted. I wasn't sure if it was rage or clarity, but I knew one thing for certain. Kayla would find out. Say continue when you're ready for the next move. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side of Nathaniel's too-soft bed, staring at the ceiling as the seconds burned holes through the dark. His steady breathing beside me made my skin crawl. I kept imagining her voice, Kayla's syrupy drawl, laced with malice, when she found out I'd been his girlfriend. Even if it was fake, even if it was business, she'd find a way to turn it into shame, and I refused to let her win again. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not a good one, not yet, but the spark was there. I wasn't going to walk away, not until I knew why. Why Nathaniel chose me. Why Kayla would tolerate being hidden while I played dress-up as his girlfriend. Why my name had ended up in that contract. The next week, I played my part like nothing had changed. I kissed his cheek when cameras were near, I looped my arm through his at charity events, and I even pretended to laugh at his dry, soulless banter. But behind the performance, I was listening, watching, reading every name that crossed his phone screen when he left it unattended, noting every business call that went a little too long, or every smirk that didn't reach his eyes. It didn't take long to find something. Thursday evening, while Nathaniel showered, I slipped into his home office. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, emails, maybe, or a calendar, but what I found was a file labeled Ransom Holdings Merger Timeline. Inside was a spreadsheet, dry stuff, projections, meeting dates, compliance notes. But the last tab stopped me cold. Prenuptial strategy. There, in clinical bullet points, was the plan. Fake dating narrative for Q3. Minimize press risk, Kayla's previous scandals. Delay engagement reveal for stock stabilization. Use subject, Holland Grace for empathy optics. Full PR phase out post-merger. Use subject, Holland Grace. I didn't even recognize my own name at first. I read it twice before the nausea hit. I was a pawn, a sympathy tool. The financially desperate girl who made the Ice King seem relatable, grounded. The feel-good backdrop to a cold, calculated empire-building exercise. They weren't hiding me from Kayla. They were using me to soften her. And worst of all, they'd planned to discard me the second it was done. I closed the file and walked out of the office with trembling hands and a smile so fake it made my cheeks hurt. Nathaniel stepped out of the shower, towel low on his hips, grinning like a man who thought he still had control. I kissed him. Soft, slow, poisonous. Because now I had what I needed. And if Kayla wanted a perfect engagement, I'd give her a show she'd never forget. Just say continue when you're ready for what comes next. The next time I saw Kayla Ransom, I was wearing white. Not bridal white. No, I wasn't insane. It was a cocktail dress Nathaniel had sent over for some media event, sleek and fitted, the kind of fabric that made people believe you belonged. I wore it like armor. The event was one of those rooftop fundraisers, all string lights and fake laughter. Nathaniel held my hand as we ascended the glass staircase. His fingers were warm, steady, but I'd learned not to mistake that for affection. I'd read the file. I knew exactly what I was to him now, a narrative, a timed piece of theater. And yet, as we stepped onto the rooftop, I smiled, because there she was. Kayla stood near the bar, flanked by 2 lawyers and a junior partner from Nathaniel's firm. Her hair was lighter than I remembered, champagne blonde, like her ego had grown its own gloss. She wore crimson, of course, a bold color, a territorial one. She didn't see me at first. Nathaniel leaned in. "That's Kayla's father over there," he murmured, motioning toward an older man with a hawkish stare. "Play nice," I ignored him. Instead, I walked right up to her. "Kayla," I said, like we were old sorority sisters catching up over mimosas. "It's been, what, a decade?" She blinked, thrown. "Do I know you?" "Of course you do," I said sweetly. "Holland Grace, class of 2014. You called me Poverty Barbie for 6 months straight. There was a pause, just the tiniest flicker of discomfort in her pupils. Then that smile, tight and sincere, spread across her lips. Oh, right, wow. I didn't realize you and Nathaniel were together. I linked my arm through his and rested my head lightly on his shoulder. Yeah, it's been magical. Nathaniel played along like the bastard he was, slipping an arm around my waist and laughing on cue. Kayla's eyes scanned us. Like she was reading footnotes she didn't write. You're full of surprises, Nate, she said, turning her wine glass between her fingers. I didn't think you were into nostalgia. I'm a sucker for authenticity, he replied smoothly. Holland keeps me grounded. There it was again, that word. Kayla's gaze slid back to me, all teeth and calculation. Well, I hope she doesn't get too attached. Business relationships can be so temporary. I smiled wider. Oh, I'm in it for the long haul, aren't we, baby? Nathaniel kissed my cheek in response. His lips were cold, but mine were on fire. Kayla walked away with her confidence intact, but I saw the hairline crack. The doubt. She thought she'd buried me a decade ago. She had no idea I'd clawed my way back just to rip the crown off her head. Say continue when you're ready for the next strike. The first time Kayla tried to dig, she sent one of her proxies. A woman named Sierra, who looked like she'd been plucked straight from a department store ad for polished betrayal, invited me to coffee 3 days later. She claimed to be writing a piece on power couples in tech, but I could see through her before the cappuccino foam had even settled. So how did you and Nathaniel meet? She asked, eyes wide, smile tighter than her blouse buttons. I played it airy. Oh, we met at a coffee shop. Total cliché. I was trying to return an order that wasn't mine, and he offered to drink it instead. Romantic, she said, with a tilt of her head that meant liar. I leaned in. He told me I was refreshing, that everyone he knew wore ambition like a second skin, but I just breathed. That one landed. Her eyes flinched. Kayla had no doubt sent her to sniff out the cracks, but I'd studied Kayla for years in high school. I knew her brand of paranoia. She couldn't stand not being in control, so I made sure she heard all the right lies. That night, Nathaniel and I had dinner with the board at his penthouse. I wore diamonds, he gifted me. Faux, I was sure, and laughed at his stories like I hadn't memorized every line of his betrayal. After dessert, while he entertained the guests, I slipped away into his home office again. This time, I opened the lock drawer. He used a basic combination lock on his desk. 4 digits. I tried Kayla's birth year first. Didn't work. Then mine. Click. Inside was a folder labeled Contingencies. I scanned the top pages and stopped breathing. A non-disclosure agreement with my name on it, already drafted, with clauses that protected Nathaniel and Kayla from reputational harm in the event of public scandal. There was even a buyout offer should I choose to disengage. He'd planned my exit before I'd even finished memorizing his address. But what chilled me wasn't that. It was the last page, a printout of a background report. Mine, address history, income records, social media profiles, former employers, even a psychological risk analysis. They'd vetted me, like an asset, like a damn rental. I took a photo of the documents with my phone, then carefully returned everything. When I walked back into the dining room, Nathaniel raised his glass toward me. To Holland, he said, eyes twinkling, for keeping me human. Everyone laughed and toasted, but I smiled for another reason. Because now I had proof. And soon, Kayla Ransom was going to learn what it felt like to be used. Say continue when you're ready for the next turn. The problem with revenge is that once it starts tasting good, it becomes a craving. And I was starving. The day after I found the contingencies file, I contacted an old friend, Maya, the only person from high school who'd ever stood up to Kayla and lived to tell about it. We hadn't spoken in years, but when she saw my name flash on her screen, she answered on the second ring. Is she back? She asked before I even spoke. I smiled into the silence. Oh, she's not just back, she's engaged. To my fake boyfriend. There was a pause, then Maya's full-bodied laugh. Holland Grace, you've always had the most dramatic stories. Yeah, well, this one's got teeth. I need your help. Maya was a data analyst now, freelance but 10 times smarter than the creeps Nathaniel paid to research me. She could crack open a digital life in hours, and within 3 days, she did. Her email was clean, to the point, subject line, Ransom's web. The contents hit like a sledgehammer. Kayla wasn't just rich and manipulative. She was dirty, fraud-level dirty, fabricated financial statements for her father's company, laundered funds disguised as consulting fees to shell corporations she personally created. And guess whose name kept popping up on the transfer records? Nathaniel Hart, my fake boyfriend, her real fiancé, her business partner in crime. It wasn't just a fake relationship I'd walked into. It was a criminal syndicate dressed in designer suits. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blinking cursor in Maya's message, feeling the old tremble return, not from fear, but from clarity. These weren't just emotionally bankrupt people. They were corrupt to the core, which meant I had leverage. But not enough to take them down. Not yet. I needed a witness, someone inside, someone they trusted. And that's when I thought of Veronica. She was Kayla's executive assistant, barely older than me, and invisible in all the ways Kayla loved her people to be. But I'd seen her at events, quiet, watchful, always 3 steps behind, but never out of earshot. She wasn't stupid, just silent. I started leaving her crumbs, a casual compliment at a gala, a gentle question about workload when Kayla wasn't around. Then, last Thursday, I handed her a flash drive wrapped in $100 bill and whispered, "I think you've seen things. If you ever want to make them matter, there's proof on this." She didn't take it, not right away, but 3 nights later, I got an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. No words, just an attachment. It was a voice memo, 1 minute and 43 seconds long. Kayla, on the phone, talking about how I'd served my purpose, how I'd never be able to prove a thing, how she couldn't wait to erase the poverty poster girl from the headlines. And Nathaniel, he laughed in the background. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just going to humiliate them, I was going to ruin them. Say continue when you're ready for the first cut. I played the voice memo over and over again until every syllable was carved into my bones. Kayla's voice, sweet, venomous, rippled through my headphones like the echo of every humiliation I'd ever swallowed. And Nathaniel's laugh at the end, that hollow, smug sound, that was the matchstick. The next morning, I started laying the groundwork for my final performance. First, I met with Maya again, this time in person. We sat in a dim booth at a diner just outside the city, her laptop open, coffee between us like this was just another casual meetup. But under the table, she handed me a hard drive. "This has everything," she whispered. "Emails, fund transfers, offshore registrations, the fake consulting contracts. You don't need a lawyer, Holland. You need a spotlight." "Good," I said, gripping it like a weapon. "Because I'm about to give them a stage." Next, I reached out to Veronica again, not with another bribe, but with gratitude. A handwritten note slipped into her gym locker through the staff entry at Kayla's company. "I don't know what they promised you, but you just gave me back my voice. When this is over, I'll make sure you're never invisible again." 2 hours later, she texted me from a burner number. "I want to help, I'm in." And just like that, I had an ally inside. We set the date for the reveal, the Ransom Hart merger gala, an over-the-top affair Kayla had been planning for months. A black tie fantasy built to unveil their engagement and announce their billion-dollar empire. She wanted a night no one would forget. I'd make sure of that. The morning of the event, Nathaniel picked me up in a town car. His cufflinks glinting like his lies. He looked over and smiled, touching my hand. "Nervous?" "Excited," I said, and for once I didn't have to fake it. We arrived to a symphony of camera flashes, champagne trays, and the who's who of New York power. Kayla stood at the top of the stairs, in a floor-length silver gown, radiant in that way only the deeply wicked can be. When she saw me, her smile twitched, because she thought I didn't know. She thought I was still playing her game. Halfway through the night, Nathaniel tapped his glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, voice like silk, "thank you for celebrating this new chapter. Kayla and I are thrilled to merge not just companies but lives." Applause thundered, and I stepped forward. I have something to say too, I said, loud enough to still the room. A hush fell, eyes turned, Nathaniel's smile faltered. Kayla's hand froze mid-toast. Before we raise a glass, I continued, pulling out my phone. I think it's only fair you all hear a few behind-the-scenes conversations from this beautiful couple. I pressed play. Kayla's voice filled the room, her exact words, her plans. Nathaniel's laugh like a gunshot after every line. People froze, some gasped, a few phones went up, already recording. Kayla stepped forward, panic cracking her facade. This is fake. She's lying. Holland, I've got bank records, emails, and a few dozen off-the-record witnesses who disagree, I said, smiling calmly. You used me, you lied to your investors, and now everyone knows. Nathaniel reached for me, whispering, "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm ending the show," I whispered back, and then I walked away, leaving them both standing in the wreckage of their empire. Say continue when you're ready to watch it all burn. By the time I reached the elevator, the silence behind me had erupted into chaos. People weren't just whispering, they were recording. Calling lawyers, pulling out earpieces, and storming toward exits. Investors who had traveled from out of state were demanding answers. PR reps were already on their phones, and Kayla was chasing after the crowd, her voice rising above it all like a sinking ship's siren. This is a setup. She's lying. She's obsessed with me. That last line actually made someone laugh. God, I wish I could have bottled that laugh forever. I stepped into the elevator just as security started moving in. One of the doormen looked at me and hesitated, probably recognizing me from every public event we'd ever faked. His brow furrowed like he couldn't figure out whose side he was supposed to be on. I smiled. Don't worry, I'm just the girlfriend. The doors slid closed. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone was already vibrating with calls. Nathaniel's name flashing like a warning light, I silenced it. Then Kayla, then unknown caller. Let them scream, let them drown in the silence I left behind. I stepped outside into the cool air, the city lights flickering around me like applause. Maya was parked a block away, engine running. When I slid into the passenger seat, she handed me a burner phone and nodded. It's done, she said. The story's out. My friend at the Ledger posted the recording 5 minutes ago. Full breakdown of the Ransom Holdings fraud will hit in the morning. I exhaled, not in relief, in release. It was finally out of my lungs, the lie, the contract, the manipulation, all of it. Kayla's empire of image and entitlement, Nathaniel's smug detachment and private betrayals. They were exposed, shattered beneath their own weight. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. Because underneath the satisfaction, there was a hollow space where my mother's hospital bracelet still lived, where I remembered signing a contract because desperation tasted better than shame. I remembered every time I smiled when I wanted to scream. Every time I kissed a man who thought I was just background. I didn't win a game tonight. I survived it. The next morning, headlines screamed their names. Ransom merger implodes amid fraud allegations. Hart in hot water, investors pull support. Used and discarded, woman's voice memo exposes elite deception. Veronica, bless her, had already lawyered up and turned whistleblower. She'd leaked internal documents that proved Kayla and Nathaniel had been covering up accounting discrepancies for over a year. Investors were filing lawsuits, stock prices crashed, and Kayla was nowhere to be found. Her Instagram went dark by noon, the engagement posts disappeared by nightfall. And the next time her name showed up in a Google alert, it was tied to pending criminal investigation. And me? I took my mom home from the hospital 2 weeks later. The bills were paid, not by Nathaniel, he never got the chance. Maya helped me launch a GoFundMe with the full story, and strangers from all over the country donated. Because pain is universal. But justice? That part felt rare. Are you okay? My mom asked me one night, her voice weak but steady. I smiled at her from the kitchen, tea in hand. I think I am now. Say continue when you're ready for the fallout and the final reckoning. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. No angry knocks on my door, no threats, no lawsuits. Just a deep, strange stillness, as if the storm had passed and left a broken skyline behind. Kayla Ransom disappeared from public life entirely. Word was, she fled the country before the SEC could serve her with anything. Rumors placed her in Monaco, or maybe Dubai, living in a rented villa and trying to sweet-talk her way back into polite society. But no amount of spin could unring the bell. She was toxic now, brand poison, her name scrubbed from boards and press releases with surgical precision. Nathaniel, on the other hand, didn't run. He tried to fight. First, he sent his lawyers after Maya, then he blamed me publicly. In a corrective statement on his social platforms, calling me a disgruntled former companion and accusing me of emotional instability and digital forgery. That backfired beautifully, because Veronica's full statement hit the media the next day, along with financial records so airtight. Even Forbes called it a masterclass in corporate unraveling. And then came the subpoenas. Nathaniel's empire collapsed faster than anyone expected. Not just because of the fraud, but because no one trusted him anymore. His board voted him out, his investors blacklisted him, and the smug, carefully curated man who once told me I was strategically charming was now a headline, tech golden boy turned cautionary tale. I watched it all unfold from my tiny sunlit kitchen with a mug of coffee and my mom beside me. There was peace in the simplicity of it, of knowing I didn't have to pretend anymore, that my life was no longer a storyline in someone else's strategy deck. Still, I wasn't naive enough to think it ended cleanly. One rainy afternoon, weeks later, I opened my mailbox and found a small, cream envelope. No stamp, no return address, just my name in tight, all-caps handwriting. Inside, one sentence, "We're not done." No signature, but I knew the ink, the threat, the weight of it. Kayla, or maybe Nathaniel, or both. For a moment, that familiar chill crept down my spine again. The feeling of being watched, marked. But then I laughed, because they were right. We weren't done. Not really. Because people like them don't go quietly. They slither into new skins, wait for the world to forget, then strike again. But now I know the rules. I know what betrayal looks like, sounds like, dresses like in a tailored suit or a designer gown. I know how to play the part. I know how to flip the script, and I know what it takes to win. So if they ever come for me again, I'll be ready. Because I didn't just survive their story, I rewrote it. And to everyone who listened, who stood with me, even in silence, I want you to know this. You helped me find my voice. You helped me fight back. Thank you, from the rawest part of my heart, for not letting me stay invisible. I'm Holland Grace, and I am no one's rented love.